today I am here to help you understand C. One of the things that made it faster was that it let you work directly with the computer's memory. This was a big deal because before C, people had to use another language called assembly to do this. But working with memory can be a bit tricky and complicated, and today's programmers usually don't need to worry about it as much. So sometimes, people who are used to working with modern languages might think C is a bit old-fashioned. Today, many programmers use languages like Java and C# for general-purpose programming instead of C. These languages allow developers to work at an even higher level of abstraction, which means they can write code that's even easier to read and understand. However, these languages are built differently from C. Java and C# have something called a runtime or a virtual machine that helps to run the code. This is different from C, which directly compiles the code into machine code that the computer can understand. These runtimes are like a layer of software that sits between the compiled code and the machine code. They help to make the code more portable and can do things like automatically manage memory, which is something that C programmers had to do manually. Even though C may not be as popular today as it once was, it's still an incredibly powerful language. And because it's been around for so long, there are still many programs and systems that use it. Learning C can help programmers to understand how computers really work, which can be a valuable skill. Languages like Java and C# are more popular than C today because they allow developers to work at an even higher level of abstraction. That means that programmers can write their code using simpler instructions that are easier to understand, and then the computer turns that code into machine code that it can execute. Java and C# also have something called a runtime or virtual machine that helps to manage the code while it's running on the computer. This makes it easier for the programmer to write code because they don't have to worry as much about things like managing memory. In C, programmers have to work more directly with the computer's memory, which can be tricky and sometimes lead to mistakes. Languages like Java and C# use a different approach that makes it easier to avoid mistakes, which is why they're more popular today. While newer programming languages like Java and C# allow developers to work at a higher level of abstraction and make things easier, it doesn't mean that C has lost its place in the computing world. It just means that C is used differently now. C is still really good at low-level tasks that need to be done quickly, like managing memory or interacting with hardware. It's like a very specialized tool that can do certain jobs really well. So, even though C is not used as widely for general-purpose tasks anymore, it still has an important role to play in the world of computing. So, C is a really important programming language because it influenced the development of many other popular languages that came after it. For example, C++ was created by adding object-oriented programming features to C. Java was designed to be similar to C, but with more safety features and portability across different platforms. C# was also heavily influenced by C and C++ and is often used for building Windows applications. One of the reasons that C has been so influential is that it was one of the first languages to provide a good balance between abstraction and control. This means that it allows programmers to work at a high level of abstraction while still giving them fine-grained control over the computer's hardware. Many other languages have followed this model and have built upon the foundations that C laid. Learning C can be really helpful because it teaches you how to think about programming in a very precise and disciplined way. C requires you to be very explicit and specific about what you want the computer to do, and this is a skill that can be applied to other programming languages as well. So, if you learn C, you'll be well equipped to learn other languages and become a better programmer overall. C was a really popular programming language when it was created in the 1970s and 1980s. Because it was so popular, many new programming languages that were created later were influenced by C in some way. In the early 1980s, a new way of programming called object-oriented programming became really popular. This led to the creation of a new programming language called C++. C++ is like a newer version of C that has some extra features, like classes, which are really useful in object-oriented programming. C is a really popular programming language, and it was made a long time ago. Since it's been around for so long, many other programming languages have been made that are similar to it. Some of these languages even have C in their name. One way that C has influenced other languages is through something called object-oriented programming. That's a big phrase, but it really just means that you can organize your code in a way that's easier to understand and work with. Some other languages like C++, Objective-C, and C#, were made to be like C, but with some extra features that make it easier to do object-oriented programming. So, even though C might not be used as much as it used to be, its influence is still felt in many other popular programming languages. Have you ever heard of the Hello World program? It's a really simple program that is used to introduce people to programming languages. The program's job is to print the message Hello World on the screen. The Hello World program in C looks like this. In this program, we use a library called stdio_h to be able to print things to the screen. Then, we define a function called main, which is where our program starts running. Inside the main function, we use another function called print to print the message Hello World. Now, let's look at the same program written in C#. In C#, we start by using a library called system. Then, we define a class called Hello World. Inside the class, we define a function called main, which is where our program starts running. Inside the main function, we use another function called console, write line to print the message Hello World. As you can see, the structure of the two programs is quite similar, even though the syntax is a bit different. This is because many programming languages have been influenced by C, and they often use similar structures and libraries. The Hello World program is a simple program that just prints the message Hello World on the screen. The code for this program looks very similar in C and C#, which is another programming language. The reason for this is that C has been very influential in the development of many programming languages. Even though C was developed many years ago, its influence is still felt today in modern programming languages like C#. So, even though C may not be as popular as it once was, it has left a lasting impact on the world of programming. Did you know that C has influenced many other programming languages? These languages have similar syntax to C, which means they look and work in similar ways. One example is C#, which is a language that was created by Microsoft. Another example is Java, which is a popular language used for many things like making apps and games. Let's look at the Hello World program, which is a famous program that prints the words Hello World on the screen. Here is the code for the program in C, which is a lot like the code from a book called the C Programming Language that was written a long time ago by two smart people named Brian and Dennis. In both the C and C# versions of the Hello World program, we use something called a string literal to print the message on the screen. A string literal is just a fancy name for a piece of text surrounded by double quotes. We use a semicolon at the end of the line to tell the computer where the line ends. In the C version, we call a function named print to print the message. In the C# version, we call a function named console, write line. Both of these functions are part of their respective languages' standard libraries. Think of a library like a collection of useful tools that programmers can use to make their programs work. At the beginning of each program, we include a line that tells the computer which library functions we want to use. This makes those functions available to us throughout the rest of the program. In C#, we saw that the main method was inside a class because C# is an object-oriented language. Java is also an object-oriented language, so it also requires a class declaration. Here is an example of a Hello World program in Java. As you can see, the main method is inside the Hello World class, just like in the C# example. The syntax for printing the Hello World string is slightly different, but the concept is the same. So, even though there are some differences between these languages, the influence of C is clear in their syntax and structure. You can again see that both programs have a function named main that serves as a starting point for the program, and the function body is surrounded by curly braces. The Java code has a few additional keywords included, as well as a parameter declared to accept command line arguments. The Java code to output the Hello World string is very similar to the C and C# examples. Instead of calling the print for console, write line function, the Java code calls the system.out.println function, which is part of the Java standard library. This function is used to output a string to the console, just like the printf and console, write line functions. The string literal is enclosed in double quotes and ends with a semicolon, just like in the C and C hash examples. It's been around for a really long time, since the 1970s in fact. And did you know that because it was so popular back then, many newer programming languages were created with its influence? Some of these languages include C++, Objective-C, C hash, and even Java. Even though these languages may look different, they all have something in common. They were all influenced by C. In fact, let's take a look at a famous program called Hello World, which is a program that just displays the words Hello World on the screen. In all these languages, the code for the Hello World program looks pretty similar. They all start with a function called main, which is where the program starts running. The code is enclosed in curly braces and the output is done using a function call like print, writeLine or system out, println. The syntax and rules for these languages are a bit different from each other, but they all have the same roots. Even though C is an older language, it's still really important today and used by lots of programmers. So, don't underestimate the power of C. C is a very important programming language that has been around for a long time. It has influenced many other languages and is still used today. In fact, it's a great first language to learn because it has a simple syntax and teaches important concepts like pointers and memory management. These concepts are useful even if you later learn other languages that have garbage collection. C is a really important language for programmers to learn. It's been around for a long time and has influenced many other programming languages. Learning C will help you understand important concepts like memory management and pointers, which you'll need to know even if you use other programming languages that handle those things for you. Even though C is an older language, it's still really useful and relevant today. It's used in many different types of computer systems and can still be the best tool for certain jobs. So even if you learn other programming languages later, C will always be a valuable language to know. Let's wrap it up for now. We'll bring you more informative content in our next video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and share this video. Thank you for watching.